Recording in progress.
God damn it. Okay, so this is general chapter 2. Just a minute. Screwing this up. Uh, okay. Okay, can you get a share screen for me, Bob, here? I don't look like I'm sharing here. Bob, are you there?
Just
Yes, I am. Hang on. And
It looks like we might all have screen share because I'm seeing that I can share mine if I hit share. You might just have to hit screen share in the top left option, desktop
yeah,
or
because
screen one.
I just put everyone could screen share.
don't pop up Marv there at the bottom, the little green share button.
Well, all right, just all right, let me try it again here.
We can see you.
All right. Let's see.
There you go. Yay.
But should be. All right.
You might want to, because we're seeing it in presenter mode where it's showing current slide, next slide. You might want to stop sharing, share it again, but choose to just do your full screen or desktop instead of just the PowerPoint window, because then we see it the way you see it instead of the presentation mode.
Well, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing you guys on my right side, and I'm seeing my slideshow. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing on the left a little bit bigger current slide 4 of 88, and then next slide a little bit smaller, selecting a frequency.
You're not supposed to be seeing that.
And that typically happens if when you go to share screen, you're just hitting the PowerPoint window instead of doing like the full screen. If you share like your full screen, it'll usually adapt and do the presentation mode.
Yeah. I usually go to the slideshow first before I share.
All right. Let me do that again then. get out of this. All right, now if I hit the slideshow again, if I hit share,
Now do the slideshow first. And then when you do share, you can point to the slide.
well, frozen here though. Let's see. I don't know what's happened here. Okay. Now, what are you guys seeing?
You,
Nothing right now, still just the cameras. No share screen.
Okay. I hit slideshow. What are you seeing now?
Nothing. So you just started the slideshow. It's usually better if you share the entire screen before you do the slideshow. But the key is when you hit share screen, the green button at the bottom, choose the top left option that should be under a category that says entire screen. And then go in and start the presentation. Because when you start the presentation, it's in full screen mode. You can't see the controls in Zoom anymore.
My problem is I can't. Okay, here. Let's see what I got here. All right, if I share.
yay, share.
And then look for the top left option under the entire screen category for like desktop one, screen one, depending on if you're on Mac, Windows, or Linux.
Probably on Windows.
So I think it says under entire screen, something like screen one or desktop one.
Yeah.
So click on that and then click the blue share button at the bottom of that little window, like the bottom of like the full window with all the different options of what you can share.
Okay. All right.
Yay.
Okay, so now we see your full desktop. So now you should be able to go back into slideshow, start from current slide. And then, oh, I see what's happening here. So could you hit, do you see at the bottom the little button that says exchange? I'm curious if that'll get it working. There we go. So now we're seeing it in sort of the full screen mode, but does that mean that you've lost, like, are you still seeing it that way? Can you still see presentation mode where you see your slides?
I see a slide.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, because at least to us, this is, it looks good where it's showing just the full screen with your slide.
The only thing is I'm reversed. I'm not. What are you seeing?
We see just the intro slide, general license course for ham radio,
Okay,
blue, white.
you're not seeing two things.
No.
Nope, no. And now it's just the one slide that says chapter two, part one of one.
Okay. All right. Okay,
So
that's fine.
this looks right to me from what you would normally see with a presentation share.
Okay, that's fine. It isn't where I would like it to be, but
Oh yeah, I think you were on what was it, slide 8? You should just be able to tap the forward or the right arrow a couple of times to get to that point.
what's that?
I think when you had it open before, you were on slide 8 of 88. You might just have to tap the right arrow a couple of times to get there. The right arrow on your keyboard, I mean.
Well,
Might have to go the other way. I think it's yeah, because I think you were going back.
well, what I wanted to do is get this large one over to my other monitor. That's the thing. I'm on the wrong monitor with this. That's my problem.
Got it. Okay, sorry, that's a little harder to troubleshoot with you over Zoom.
Okay. Because I won't be looking at you guys. I'll be looking at the screen. but I don't have to look at it that much. Okay, so we're looking at we're on operating techniques. So uh, anyway, you guys you guys have gone through the technicians class, and uh, uh, you've worked VHF, uh, and you've had some HF privileges in on 80, 40, and 15 meters and 10 meters with in CW if you wanted to do it. Other than that, you've had no other HF privileges. Um, so now you're working toward full privileges, and so now you have the advantage of using, all of your privileges uh, in the general class. Uh, but again, you guys learned about operating with courtesy and good practices. And of course, in the technicians class, they hammered you about the rules and regulations. You know, hopefully throwing the fear of God into you. About FCC and what they might do to you if you don't follow the rules. Uh, and that's a good thing because as you should or should not, as you should know, they can get tough on you if you don't follow the rules. The first thing you have to do is, of course, is to find and select a frequency. Uh, you can refer to the band plans in Chapter 1, and you looked at that, I'm sure, when you were reading the book. Yeah, let me get this thing. Getting out of line here. Again, nobody has a priority right to a frequency. Uh, they might claim that they do, but they don't. Uh, and you're going to find quite often in the frequencies that you might have a hard time sometimes finding a clear frequency. But so you have to watch but the big thing is to listen. Uh, you find a frequency and you listen because you don't know. You could be in the skip zone, and there might be somebody that you could hear, and he's listening to somebody else, and you can't hear either one of them. Okay, so all of a sudden, one of them is going to be there, and you're going to be interfering with them. So you should be listening for at least 30 seconds, up to a minute, to make sure the frequency is not in use before you start getting on. And you have to make sure that when you're operating, that the adjacent frequencies are not you're not going to interfere with an adjacent frequency. Now you look at the recommended signal separation up there in the corner, and on CW that's 150 to 500 hertz for signal separation, and on single sideband it's 2 to 3 kilohertz, and RTTY is 250 to 500 hertz, and PSK 31 is 150 to 500. I don't know how much PSK 31 is being used these days. Uh, I hear it's not much used. I don't use it. In fact, I've never used it. Uh, CW is my main mode of operation. I get on single sideband sometimes, but not a lot. But again, the key thing is don't interfere. Make sure you're not interfering. And again, as I was saying, check to make sure that you're not interfering with another station that's being used. The thing in voice, you're going to say, is this frequency is in use? Uh, and you identify with your call sign. Uh, in, in code, you're going to set a QRL. And you wait. And then you ask again. Now, quite often, I hear quite often somebody will say, is this frequency in use? And immediately they start calling. Or in CW, they'll QRL and immediately start sending. That's not the way you're supposed to do it, and that's bad manners. And quite often, you're going to be interviewing, and I've had people interfere with me that way. So in summary, confirm your frequency is authorized for your license privileges, and make sure you're not interfering with somebody. Now, hopefully, you'll get a radio that has split uh, uh, capability. A split capability is the ability to listen on one frequency and send on another. This is quite common, especially in DX operations when a lot of people are trying to contact the sender, the DX operation, and he's trying to separate all the people that are trying to get a hold of him, all the operators that are trying to get a hold of him. So uh, he might be listening. He might be sending on, let's say, 7225 and listening on anywhere from 2230 to 2240. Uh, this is quite common. CW is the same way. It can be a zoo. Uh, in fact, it'll sound like a zoo when you get on the air and you start listening. It'll sound like a zoo. But it's the only way that they can control it. Uh, and but it's quite common to operate that way. So as I say, you're listening on one and transmitting on another. Now,
I have a question about that if I can interrupt.
sure.
When they're doing that, is that typically like maybe they start off on just the single frequency, and then as more people start kind of trying to break in, do they just sort of announce on that frequency like, okay, I'll be listening on this frequency, but I'll be transmitting on this frequency, and it's sort of established ad hoc, or is that common for DX contacts where they already know that a lot of people are going to try to contact them, and so they're already kind of set up that way? I guess how's that established, like just on the fly or pre-planned
Well,
for the dual?
it depends. Sometimes it's just automatic. They know that they're going to be, if it's a busy and wanted DX operation, they know right off the bat that they're going to be operating split. Uh, quite often, uh, quite often somebody will start. Let's say somebody is down, let's say on a Caribbean island, and uh, and they just start casually operating, and then people start calling them. Uh, he will, when it gets to be too much for him, maybe after at some point after maybe 5 or 6 guys are calling him constantly, he'll start he'll just suddenly say, "Okay, I'm listening up." All right. When he says he's listening up, he's operating split. So now you got to figure out where he's listening up if he doesn't say so. If he says I'm listening up 2, that means he's up 2 kilohertz. Okay. If he says I'm listening up 5, he's up 5 kilohertz. If he doesn't say where he's listening up, you're gonna have to figure out where he's listening, and he's gonna move. Okay. Uh, he might start at 1 kilohertz up, and every time he makes a contact, he might move up a little more, just to give himself room, so that he's not being, so he can find somebody he can actually make out who is who's calling, because there are so many people calling, he can't figure out the call signs. They're calling over each other, so he's trying to figure out who is actually calling. So uh, he's gonna try to create a little space for himself to figure out who is actually calling. So that's the way he's gonna work it. It's a common operating technique, and actually it makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of interference. There's a lot of often quite a bit of deliberate interference, what we call QRM. Uh, Unfortunately, people will deliberately, as I say, deliberately interfere. Uh, and unfortunately, sometimes what'll happen, especially for some what we might call rare contacts or people. Let's say there's some operator. Let's say there's a guy in Saudi Arabia that uh, gets on the radio, and he's just operating casually, and he starts into a conversation. He picks up one guy, 2 or 3 others start calling him, some more start calling him. He starts operating. He starts operating split. Uh, uh, Finally, somebody starts to QRM. You know, he finally gets, after a while, he gets ticked off and says, "I'm going QRT." That means he's going to shut down. And I've had that happen to me. Uh, I was trying to get a hold of one guy once in Kuwait. I was on the radio for 45 minutes trying to break in on him, trying to through the split, and there was a guy that was deliberately QRMing. Finally, he just got fed up and said, "I'm done for the day," and he left. It's unfortunate, but it happens.
Not to completely go down or take us off topic, but I guess what's the motivation behind that? Is that just like other amateurs that are just kind of being trolls, like it's the internet, or is that usually like some sort of a government entity of some sort, like a foreign government that's it, I guess interrupting that or causing interference?
No, it's never a government entity. It's just some guy being a jerk.
Well,
Got it.
uh, too, Marv, especially on the higher bands, people don't hear everything. So, and if they're a sloppy operator, and like
Well,
Marv,
I'm talking about the guy that sends a carrier, just sends a carrier.
right. Yeah, that's the horrible thing about those auto tuners. People, you'll hear them tune up right on top of the frequency. Then they'll check in, and it's just I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, you get that too. You get the guy that tunes up right on the frequency.
That some people don't hear well. Their station don't, and
Yeah.
they'll be clobbering people, and they don't even know it. It's horrible.
Can
And
I make a quick comment?
yes.
Yeah, this is Joe, KE4ZYQ. About the split frequencies, I use my 991A in order to program the ISS repeater in, and I put the VHF and UHF frequencies in, two different channel memory banks next to each other. And I put an extra one in for the receive because I tried to affect it for the Doppler effect. So then when I transmitted and got through to a couple of New York stations and one in West Virginia through the repeater on the ISS, I technically didn't split the frequency and program the two on the same memory channel. I used different channels to accomplish it, although I had to toggle between transmit and receive on my radio. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a question. Is that what you call duplexing? When they say when the operator says I'm duplexing, I'm going to go to split dual frequency. Is that the same word, duplexing?
No, I wouldn't call it duplexing.
Okay, and then one of the advantages of the dual frequency is you can hear yourself when you transmit, you can hear yourself and what's going on. If you don't use dual frequency, you can't hear what's being said and you double with someone. Is that true too?
Well, not exactly. I mean, the purpose of the split operation is to give room for the operator to be able to figure out who's calling it. Okay, that's the main purpose of it. All right, all right. It's
So
not.
how is it how is it different than duplexing?
Well, you're not on the same frequency.
Well, when,
Yeah, go ahead, John.
yeah, when you are transmitting, y- your receivers shut down usually, don't they?
Yeah.
Not on dual frequency. You're transmitting on one frequency and receiving on another. That's what all the I listen to the tech nets and they call it duplexing. All the control the repeater owner will assign a control operator and you have to ask for permission to duplex. That's what they call it. But maybe I'm getting all my terms messed up. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
But
Well, we're
we'll
not.
stick to the book. I'm getting way off the subject like Chris did. So we'll go back to the book.
yeah,
But I
that's
just
repeater.
Yeah, we're not on repeaters here.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not on repeaters here. So speaking of the tuning, uh, HF equipment as compared to the to VHF UHF rigs is you know where you've got specific channels, you've got continuous tuning, uh, with a variable frequency oscillator, and so you could tune by steps that you could set the rate for your tuning, whether you want to tune by 1 kilohertz or 5 or however you want to do it. Uh, and when you're operating, you should figure out, you know, what you're going to be doing, and a lot depends on the propagation and and what you intend to do. If you're uh, and again, a lot of this depends, as I say, on propagation. If you're operating during the daytime, uh, for example, and you're in the United States, uh, uh, after, early in the morning, you're going to, let's say, where I am in Michigan here, I'm not going to be doing too much on 10 meters. Okay. Uh, After the morning, I'm going to be looking for 20 meters or 40 meters. Uh, Now, sometimes though, you'll get propagation on 10 meters, but again, a lot depends on who I'm calling or who I want to call. Let's say, for example, I want to have a sked with uh, with somebody. Let's say I want to have a sked with somebody in Florida. Well, I'm going to try to set it up with them for 40 meters. Okay. Uh, because that would be I would have a good chance for good propagation on 40 meters with somebody in Florida. I would not want to do it probably on 20 meters. It's not likely to work, and 20 meters is occupying a little too much spectrum space. Okay. Uh, and in fact, he might not be even able to hear me. I'd be skipping right over him. And we'll be getting into propagation later on in another chapter, so we'll be talking more about that sort of thing. Here's the band plan that has been sort of agreed to pretty much on that people pretty much adhere to, generally speaking. For example, there's a DX window on 3500 to 3510. The same way on 40 meters from 700 to 710, 720. There's a QRP CW calling frequency at 7.030. And there's some informal ones too. Like, for example, there's a group called the SKCC group, Straight Key Century Club, and they get out at 7.050 to 7.060. And then up about 7.060 is another QRP group, or a QRP calling frequency. And then around 7.100, a little above 100, people who are a little slower on CW will kind of congregate there. If they're not very fast on CW, and they're sort of in the learning stage on CW, they'll look for contacts there. That's quite common there. But I did want to talk. Let me see if I can get. I don't know. I don't know if I can. I'd like to bring in a. How do I bring in a?
Are you looking to share something else on your screen temporarily?
Yeah.
You might have to hit the escape key on your keyboard, open it, drag it over to the screen that you're currently sharing, and then go back in and hit start sharing your screen again, or start sharing the presentation again. But we can see your desktop right now.
All right. Let me see if I can find what I want to show you.
While he's looking for that, all HF signals are from point to point over the airwaves. None of them ever go on a repeater. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
See,
yes.
I thought some of the HF signals could hit a repeater, but none of them can.
No,
Okay,
there,
thank you. That explains
yeah,
everything. Thank
there
you.
are no repeaters. Can you
All
see
right.
this band plan?
Yes.
I wanted to point something out to you guys here. Uh, we talked a little bit a few minutes ago about your uh, the width of your signal. Like you've got for single sideband, you've got 3 kilohertz width. Now you notice, you see over here on 40 meters on your general path here, you've got 7.175. You see that down here?
Yeah.
You
Yep,
see
we
that?
see it.
Okay. So if you've got a 3 kilohertz width on your band plan, 3 kilohertz width on your single sideband, you can't be at 7.175. You've got to be above that. If you're right on 7.175, you're going to be out of your band privileges. So you've got to be very careful about that. And that's the same way at the top of that too, at 7,300. You can't be at 7,300 because if you're right at 7,300, you're going to be out of your band privileges. And so, and it's the same way with like 20 meters. You can't be right on 14.175. Now, and you've got to be careful about this because in the heat of the moment, sometimes, let's say you're in a contest, or you hear somebody, you might hear a Canadian down below 7.175, and he's calling CQ. You can't talk to him because you're going to be out of your band privileges. So be careful of that.
Marv,
Yeah.
I have a correction. There are repeaters on 10 meters. I think
Okay.
I think they're FM repeaters on 10
Okay.
meters. Way up there.
All right. All right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't. I don't work with that, so I don't
I don't
really.
either. I don't either.
All right. Let's go back to my. All right. So anyway, so here's some common Q codes that we use. QRL, are you busy? If it's a question mark, these would that would be used mostly in using CW. Now, quite commonly though, just in speaking, will often use QSO. You know, I've had a QSO with John. I had a QSO with Wes. Uh, QRP is a common phrase when we're talking about low power. I bought a QRP rig, meaning I got a 5-watt rig. QSL, we talk about QSL cards. Okay, and sometimes we'll refuse. Did you? Somebody might make a comment. You'll be talking to them on the radio, and they'll say QSL. In other words, they heard you. Uh, QRM will say somebody QRM'd me, you know, meaning interference. QRN is natural noise, static, uh, lightning strikes. Uh, I went QRT. I shut down. Okay, a QTH is your location. So these are common phrases that we use. We use them on the air, and we use them just talking to people. Let's get into some practice questions. Which of the following is true concerning access to frequencies? Nets have priority. QSOs in progress have priority. Except during emergencies, no amateur station has priority access to any frequency. Contest operations should yield to non-contest use of frequencies. Anybody got an idea?
I believe that would be C.
C.
Okay,
C.
you're right. C is correct. What is good amateur practice if propagation changes during a contact, creating interference from other stations using the frequency? Advise the interfering station that you are on the frequency and that you have priority. Decrease power and continue to transmit. Attempt to resolve the interference problem with the other station in a mutually acceptable manner. Switch to the opposite sideband.
C.
Yep, C is right. Attempt to resolve the interference problem with the other station in a mutually acceptable manner. When selecting a CW transmitting frequency, what minimum separation from other stations should be used to minimize interference in stations on adjacent frequencies? 5 to 50 kilohertz, 150 to 500 kilohertz, 1 kilohertz to 3 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz to 6 kilohertz.
I think Chris is right when he said in the chat B.
D.
B. Yep, B. 150 to 500 kilohertz. And I would suggest when you guys are looking for a radio, if you guys can find a radio with, if you're buying a used radio and a guy's got a 300 hertz filter, that's a good radio to have. If you get into contesting, especially, because when guys get into contests, a 300 hertz filter is really valuable. Because they get really tight sometimes. Assuming you're running CW. Now, if you're not, if it's just single sideband, if you're staying with single sideband, it's of course the 300 hertz filter is not that important. But in fact, the 300 hertz filter isn't going to do you any good at all in single sideband. But if you're thinking at all of doing CW, it's a very, very handy filter to have. Let's see. When selecting a single sideband transmitting frequency, what minimum separation should be used to minimize interference to stations on adjacent frequencies? 5 to 50 kilohertz, 150 to 500 hertz. 5 to 50 hertz, 150 hertz to 500 hertz, 2 kilohertz to 3 kilohertz, or approximately 6 kilohertz.
C.
Yep. Yep. How can you avoid harmful interference on an apparently clear frequency before calling CQ on CW or phone? Send QRL on CW followed by your call sign, or if using phone, ask if the frequency is in use, following by your call sign. Listen for 2 minutes before calling CQ. Send the letter V in Morse code 7 times. And listen for a response, or say test several times and listen for a response. Send QSY on CW, or if you're using phone, announce the frequency is in use. Then give your call sign and listen for a response.
A.
A. A is it. Send QRL on CW, followed by your call sign, or if in use, or if using phone, ask if the frequency is in use, followed by your call sign. And again, as I said, listen, listen, listen. It's very important. Which of the following complies with commonly accepted amateur practice when choosing a frequency on which to initiate a call? Listen on the frequency for at least 2 minutes to be sure it's clear. Identify your station by transmitting your call sign at least 3 times. Follow the voluntary band plan. All these choices are correct. This one's a little trickier.
Yeah, that one is. I think I would say C.
I would say C.
Yep, C as is. Follow the voluntary band plan. What does the Q signal QRL mean? Will you keep the frequency clear? Are you operating full break-in, or can you operate a full break-in? Are you listening only for a specific station? Are you busy, or is this frequency in use?
D.
C?
D.
D?
David. Yes.
David? Okay.
Yep.
You're right, David. Delta, actually.
Delta.
Which of the following are examples of the NATO phonetic alphabet? Alpha, Baker, Charlie, Dog. Adam, Boy, Charlie, David. America, Boston, Canada, Denmark. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta.
Delta.
D.
Yeah, you're correct. Please do use the NATO alphabet. You got to remember, quite often you're talking to people who live someplace else in the world, and they don't know English, and they're using the NATO phonetic alphabet themselves. So if you throw something else in, you know, if instead of saying kilo you say Kalamazoo, you're going to really throw them off. Which of the following is the common use of the dual VFO feature on a transceiver? To allow transmitting on 2 frequencies at once, to permit full duplex operation, transmitting and receiving at the same time, to transmit on 1 frequency and listen on another, to improve frequency accuracy by allowing variable frequency output, VFO operation.
D.
Yep. C.
It's B. See, it's B, duplexing. I asked about that. No one had an answer. That's what I read in the book. That's what's called duplexing.
Yeah, but it does. But that's not the answer. You see, C is the answer. To transmit
No,
on 1
but
frequency and listen on
they
another.
threw that in there to fool me.
Yep, they did.
So
They
is
did.
the difference between why it's not technically duplexing would be when you're doing dual VFO, you can still only transmit and receive like one at a time if you're holding down the push to talk. Whereas if it's duplex, I'm guessing it probably has 2 antennas where it can listen with one antenna and transmit on the other, so it is truly listening and transmitting simultaneously. Like I guess is that kind of the difference?
Yeah, it's used in repeaters to because they transmit on a different frequency than they're receiving on repeaters.
Okay, to translate this into VHF terms, duplex or full duplex is when you can transmit and receive at the same time, and simplex is when you can transmit or receive, but not both at the same time. And HF transceivers are basically simplex, or although for split operation, you transmit on one frequency and listen on a different one.
A transmitter is
But
not going to allow you to send on two antennas at the same time.
So I guess that might be a better way to term it. So even if you're doing dual VFO, it's still technically simplex communication, correct? Because you're not listening and receiving or transmitting and receiving at the same time.
Correct.
Is that the difference? Got it.
yes,
Very good. Thank you. Yes, that's a very good explanation. Thank you.
Okay, making contacts. So normally you don't call CQ on VHF or UHF, though I do hear it at times. But it is the method quite often used on HF. Okay. So you're calling you're calling CQ, 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 and then you use your call a few times with phonetics. In other words, I would say CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Whiskey 5 Delta Tango, Whiskey 5 Delta Tango, W5 Delta Tango, or W5DT, W5DT. You pause for a response and then repeat it if you don't get an answer. Do pause, don't keep sending without a pause. And I just hate it when somebody just keeps calling. If they call CQ, 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 CQ 10 or 15 times, and then they only send their call sign once, and then they start it all over again. Okay, drives me nuts. Usually what I do is I just keep going. I don't even bother answering it.
When you said QRZ, Marv, that one gets me. There'll be the DX station, and they just say QRZ. They don't give their call sign at all.
Yeah, that's another one that gets me. Yeah, they don't give their call sign again. And that, you know, of course, if it's a DX station and I'm interested in the DX station, I'm going to have to hang around and listen. But you know, it's see where they are. Uh, and of course, if it's a contest situation, that annoys me too. I'm not much of a contester, but if I am in the contest, uh, you know, I don't like it if the contester is not repeating his call sign at least on a regular basis. But quite often I'll hear, especially in CW, I'll hear a guy send a string of 10 CQs and then he'll send his call sign once, you know. And if he's lousy on his key and I don't quite pick up his call sign right away, then I'm going to have to listen to another string of 10 CQs. I don't listen. I just keep going. I turn the dial and keep going. So again, in CW, you're going to send CQs 3 times, your call sign 3 times, and of course you do it without phonetics. Now, of course, if you're intended to call DX, you're going to call CQ, CQ, CQDX, or CQDX. This means you don't want to talk to somebody local. And it usually means you don't want to talk to somebody in Canada either. You're looking for somebody outside of North America. So here they say outside the lower 48, and it could be that, I guess. But typically, I make the assumption that they're including Canada too. But you could be asking, I guess, for somebody in Canada. If you're new and you're looking for those Canadian provinces. Now you might be looking for somebody in particular. You could be saying CQ, CQ, Europe. And you will hear, by the way, you will hear people, for example, a DX station calling, and they'll say CQ, CQ, South America. They don't want you calling them. So don't call them. You're just going to irritate them. That's bad manners. So don't do that. And when they're busy and they're answering, sometimes they'll split up the call areas to make it easier for them to avoid half the known universe calling them. So they'll start calling. Let's say it's some guy in Saudi Arabia, and he's making contacts. So he'll say, okay, South America only, and you should stand by and wait till he says North America. If he says North America, call area 5. If you're not call area 5, don't answer it. Okay. Again, you're just going to tick him off. If you tick him off enough, and if he writes your call sign down and he says, "I'm never going to answer this guy," you can forget it for the day, maybe forever. So during CQ contest, you're going to hear CQ contest or CQ test, or maybe a CQ from a special event station. You're going to find that we find any reason whatsoever to get on the air. So, if it isn't a contest, it's going to be a special event station. They just had, this last week, they had the Route 66 special events. People were on the air from states that were on Route 66. Okay, so and you could, if you made contact with them and you lined them up, you could get a QSL card from them, and of your very own from Arizona or California or any of the states in between, or all the states that were on Route 66. Another popular one is the 13 colonies. That's very popular. It's the 13 colonies, Britain and France. And there's all kinds of those kind of things going on all the time. And again, somebody's going to say CQ California perhaps, or CQ North America, whatever it happens to be. If you want to join an outgoing QSO, you can do that. You just drop your call sign in. Just do it once, though. you hear a break, you got to wait for a break in the conversation and just drop your call sign in. You can do it on CW also. You just send break and then BK and then your call sign. I don't know if the same rules apply during contest. You're just setting your call sign during the contest. Now there are DX windows which were designed to give operators from other countries with restricted privileges band press space to make DX contacts outside their countries. And these are only a few kilohertz wide. I don't really find I don't find that very common. I haven't, frankly, I have not used the 50, the 50.1 to 50.125 megahertz for long distance contacts, so I can't really speak to it too much. Perhaps Wes or John have used it, but I have not. There are nets and schedules. Lots of nets, lots of schedules. There are nets for maritime use. There are church nets and medical nets, and you can find them on the internet if you look for them. You should avoid scheduling contacts on national calling frequencies and popular bands, but I don't know exactly what they mean by popular bands because at any particular time, anything can be popular, especially weekends. You know, Saturdays and Sundays, Saturdays especially, it can be a zoo out there. You know, with the contests. You could check the contested calendars. There's a contest calendar. If you go to www.contestcalendar.com and look for WA7BNM, Whiskey Alpha 7, Baker November Mike. He has a contest calendar there that is very good. Covers what's going on, you know, on the weekends and stuff like that. And you can see what's going to be busy for the weekend. Some weekends are not so busy. Others are it's just wall-to-wall contests. That's probably the most popular site for looking for a contest. Now, if you happen to be running a net and you find your net is the frequency that you normally would operate your net on is busy, somebody's having a QSO on it, well, you're just going to have to move for the time being until it clears, or well, essentially that. Hopefully you've got a backup frequency that you would go to. But again, nobody has a right to the frequency, and you don't have a right to that frequency.
Can I ask a question about the nets?
Yes.
Are all nets on repeaters? And is there always a control operator?
They're not off of repeaters. These are not. We're not talking repeaters here.
This is all DXing.
No, that's not DXing either.
That's what I'm confused about.
Okay. You
Because
can
usually
have
when they say nets, and
you can have a net. You can have a net. For example, there's a net on Tuesday nights on 7.735. I'm sorry, no, 3.7. I'm sorry, 3.535. I believe it's 3.535. 3.535. That's a QRP net for guys who operate low watt transmitters, 5 watt transmitters. Okay, it's on Tuesday nights around, I forget what time it is, 7 or 8 o'clock or something like that. And they get together at that time. Okay, they have a net operator, they have a net control. This guy here in Michigan, and people check into the net. That probably lasts 10 minutes or whatever, maybe longer if they got something to talk about. And they have they have a round robin. There are
every Friday night I listen to a net called On the Wind System. It's for it's called the technical net, and they answer all the technical net questions. And I tune in every Friday night at 9:30 on the Wind System. But I thought it had to be on a repeater. You're saying you could turn in at different frequencies and not be on a repeater. So
I think, can I make a comment?
Yes.
What I think the confusion is there with the gentleman is there are VHF, UHF repeater nets, but then there are HF nets that are just HF.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a difference.
Thank you.
It's usually a frequency and time. You meet at a certain frequency and time. Some of the nets I'm involved with run for hours.
Yeah. Like I said, I listen to a Texas net every Friday night at 9:30 our time, Eastern time. It's 6:30 their time. I tune in every Friday night. It's called the Wind System. I've learned so much. I've been listening to them for 5 years. So thank you. You explained it. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, there are, again. There's a lot of nets. There's a maritime net. When I was in sailing, there was a maritime net that I used to tune into. Okay, and again, it was HF. You know. And,
Thank you.
But again, it was not VHF, not UHF, but HF. There are some Christian nets, and there are I think the Salvation Army runs a net.
There's
You can
AM
find
net.
if you were to Google HF nets, I think you could find something. You could get information on it. You know,
That AARL, or I'm sorry, American Radio League, they uh they put all the nets out. You could find a lot of nets on there too.
Okay.
ARRL. If you Google that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you could.
Could I make a brief other comment real quick?
Yeah.
This is Joe KE4CYQ. One thing that was mentioned earlier, which was great in mentioning in the class here, that I wish everybody on frequency here on the radio, on the Zoom, I say on frequency, on Zoom, passes on and carries on is the pause when transmitting. In case, I mean, it's not as often in HF, but in VHF, UHF local within your state or whatever, the pause for possible emergency traffic. It gets lost in the licensed ham radio operators on any level, and sometimes we can key too fast. So I thought I'd just throw that out. Remember the possibility of emergency traffic or somebody that needed the frequency.
That was a good idea. I'll tell you what. It's 10 minutes after 8. Let's take a 5 minute break in case anybody's got to go to the bathroom or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, one thing different with HF, if there's two people talking at once, a third party can hear both of them, whereas on a repeater, one wins. But HF's a little different in that respect.
Is that even the case with if you're on HF but using FM? Because I recall, at least in the technician, one
No,
of the
no,
differences with
no, not
FM.
FM, not FM. It's an AM
Okay,
thing for sideband
got it.
for
So kind of like
CW.
the AM radio where you'd start like between state lines back in the day, start to hear two stations at once.
Yeah, yeah. Which at least then the third party knows there was a double going on, which on a repeater, a lot of times you don't even know a double happens with FM.
How you doing, John?
I think I will stand up.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, I better do it. My back will complain if I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Or somebody once said, I feel your pain.
I'm the same way. I had to stand up because I got a back problem too. It's tough getting old.
They say it beats the alternative for now.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I found a
I've
way.
never.
I was going to say, I found a way to try not to get older. I just don't celebrate birthdays anymore.
Yeah, I didn't mean to ask a lot of questions about repeaters, but I've never broadcast on HF, because I respect my technician's license, and I've never broadcast on high frequency. So I just had a lot of questions about nets versus point to point transmissions, and you guys answered them all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, there's no such thing I learned as a dumb question, just people don't ask them. Ralph, where are you at location wise?
I'm just outside of Detroit,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm
just
just
west
north
of.
of I'm north of Detroit, Clinton Township.
I'm in Livonia.
Okay, another Michigander. That's good.
Yeah, well, I was supposed to. He was mentioned about the class. I signed up last year for the class, and that Oak Park where they were supposed to have it got flooded. We were all
Oh,
set to start the class, and it got flooded where they're going to have it, so the class was canceled. So I had to wait a year to take this class. But I'm not. I'm not that familiar with a lot of the HF rules. I've been reading the book over and over and following it and going. Like I say, you go to the wind system on Friday nights, they answer a ton of technical questions. I've learned so much from listening to that technical net. It's just really incredible.
I know I personally learned some things on the operation of the radio I bought, the Shack in the Box. I learned about it before I ever got it from YouTube, and you got to be selective of who you listen to. And I was able to program that radio when I finally got it. Geez, a couple of years ago, I was able to program it. I don't remember looking at the manual.
Yep. Well, I there's a Livonia club. It's called LARC, Livonia Area Repeater Club, and they meet every Saturday in a restaurant. And I usually go there. And a couple of the Elmers have helped me. I've asked them tough questions, and they've set me on the right path. So hopefully someday I'll be an Elmer and help somebody.
Well, I'm sure you will. Okay, well, let's get going over here. I'm probably behind here a little bit, so I know, in fact, I know I'm behind. So let's talk about logging contacts. Uh, we used to have to keep a log. The FCC required it, but it's no longer required. But most guys do keep a log. Uh, uh, Typically, it's again you're keeping it your time, the date, the frequency or the band, and the mode of the contact, call sign, signal reports, name, equipment used, sometimes other stuff, you know, depends what you want to keep. Uh, I usually keep track of stuff like, if I've made some changes to equipment, uh, I keep a log of that sort of thing. Uh, uh, There's a lot of different software available. You can keep a physical log, a paper log if you want. You can keep a software. There's a lot of software available. Uh, uh, it has its advantages, that's for sure. If the FCC for any reason wants to know what you've been doing, it's a good way to have a record. In case they've been questioned, if they have any question whatsoever. It's not likely to come up, but you never know. Now, when you're operating at 60 meters with an antenna, other than a dipole, the FCC does require you keep a record of antenna gain calculations or manufacturer's data, because you need to meet a 100-aught ERP restriction. Now, there's a number of different, while we're talking about logging contacts, let's talk a little bit about software. Let me get out of this down here a little bit. There's several different logging programs. I've got a sheet that I'm going to send you guys that's going to have some of this information on it. There's a logging program called Log4, what we call it Log for Old Men, LOG, the numeral 4 OM. And there's another one, Ham Radio Deluxe, which is it's a good program, but it's expensive. You pay $100 to get the program, and then you pay another $50 a year to keep it. The DX Lab, I use DX Lab. It's a free program. It's a complex program. It's got a number of modes to it, and it has a learning curve to it, but I find it to be an excellent program. There's another one called N3FJP, November 3, Frank Juliet Papa, which is a pretty good program. Again, there is an upfront charge for it, but you can use it for a certain period, then you have to pay for it. And I understand it's pretty good, but I haven't used it. There are other programs, a lot of them free. I recommend that you use something. I do not recommend that you use something like QRZ, because it doesn't allow you to do much other than just store your contacts. It doesn't allow you to do any sorting. It doesn't allow you to to put them in some sort of order if you want to use, if you're trying to work, if you're trying to have a way of figuring out whether you've got all of the contacts you need for worked all states or DXCC or something like that. Something like DX Lab is good for something like that. But again, if you get on and do some searching, you're going to find a lot of logging software products, and you should look around. You'll find something. But I'll put together this sheet. I've already put together the sheet. I just need to send it to you guys, and I'll do that.
They have a neat interchange format too. Most all of them, you can pass the data from one logging program to the other.
Yeah.
That's very handy.
Yes, it is. And of course, they've got a logbook for the world. The ARRL has the logbook for the world. Some guys have complained that it's difficult to use, that they can't figure out how to do it, but I don't know. I didn't find any trouble with it. I was able to figure it out and do it. Managing interference. Again, we're back to the idea that as opposed to VHF, UHF, we're not channelized, and a lot of amateurs are using the frequencies, and so things get crowded. We have atmospheric conditions, lightning strikes, you name it. You've got interference from consumer electronics. The guy next door is running a plasma TV. Any number of conditions, especially if you're in a city. The possibilities of interference are great, but we have to deal with it. And learning how to make contacts under these conditions that's part of what we do. Okay, it's just if you want to be an operator, if you want to be an amateur radio operator, you learn how to deal with it, and it's a constant battle, and one day you don't have interference, the next day there's the lower power company's got an issue with something up on a pole, and it's causing interference with you. And you've got to you're going to have to trace it down, then get with the power company and convince them to do something about it before 5 years pass.
Marv, got a question.
Yeah.
Is there two kind of interference you're talking about? Outside interference due to like noise in the neighborhood, noise of the machinery or microwave or whatever. But then you got the noise on the frequency that you're picking up other static noise that could be possibly tuned, would you say, with your radio if it has a mic gain and certain noise blankers and amplified buttons to push? Would that be accurate to say that there's two different kind of noise as opposed to just one?
Sure. There's all kinds of noise, and you got to figure out how you're going to get rid of that noise. You've got noise blankers on your radio, and some radios are better at getting rid of it than others. But that's the art. That's the art of ham radio, to a great extent. You figure out what you can do and what you can live with, and solving what you can, and living with what you can't. Okay. Uh, Obviously, the better the radio you have, they can handle these things a lot. You know, some of the older radios are not as good at handling noise as a more modern radio. But some of the modern radios don't do well either, so it depends. Uh, that's why you need to, when you're looking for a radio, you got to be looking around and checking the specs on it, talking to people. EHAM is a good place to check the reviews to see what they're saying about the radio. Bob Sherwood's little spreadsheet on all the radios is a good place to go to see how when he looks at it. You got to be able to interpret that. But he's got a little chart. If you look at his chart, he's got a chart for interpreting how to read his specs. But an expensive radio is not necessarily the best radio. And sometimes an expensive radio is not going to do you any good if you're in a high noise environment. So these are all things you have to take into consideration when you're a ham radio operator. So you've got all kinds of interference, as they say. You've got harmful interference, which might be deliberate, and it might not be, deliberate. So as far as interference, you've got to learn what bands are crowded and when they're crowded. You've got to learn, for example, weekends are always going to be busy. Okay, there's always going to be contests. If you're a contester, that's wonderful. If you're not a contester, it's not so wonderful. But we're all ham radio operators. They have as much right to the frequencies as you do. So you've got to go to for example, if you're not in contest, you're going to be looking at the work bands. You're not, because the contesters, by agreement, don't use those bands. 30, 17, 12. They stay off those bands. So you have to learn the characteristics of the bands. You got to learn something about propagation, and again, how to trace noise. And what could be giving you noise? You could pick up noise from or over the horizon radar, for example. So again, you have to learn how to use your equipment. You have to understand its strengths, its weaknesses. It has its strengths and weaknesses. There is no perfect radio. You'll never find it. But there's the perfect radio for you, for your financial position, for how you operate. and a radio that'll make you happy. And, and a radio that you can live with. Again, you can check published calendars for major operating events, so that you're not so that you're not going to be bothered. If you're figuring on having a schedule with your buddy down in Arizona someplace, you want to make sure that you're not going to be doing it on some afternoon where there's a big contest going on. Again, you got to be flexible. No one has a right to a frequency. Got to have a backup plan. You got a net going. That has, again, as we talked earlier, you got to be prepared to move. Don't argue. Don't get into arguments with people on the air. Doesn't do you any good. You get the bubbas down on 80 meters, 75 meters, on Saturday night when they get into their bourbon and branch water, and they get 3 sheets to the wind, and they get to arguing. You don't want to get into that. It's not worth it. Just move on. Which of the following is required by the FCC rules when operating in 60-meter band? If you are using an antenna other than a dipole, you must keep a record of the gain of the antenna. You must keep a record of the date, time, frequency, power level and stations worked. You must keep a record of all third-party traffic. You must keep a record of the manufacturer of your equipment and the antenna used.
A.
Yep, A. If you're using an antenna other than a dipole, you must keep a record of the gain of your antenna. What is the recommended way to break into a phone contact? Say QRZ several times, followed by your call sign. Say your call sign once. Say breaker, breaker. Say CQ, followed by the call sign of either station.
B.
No, I'm afraid it's B. Say your call sign once.
Yeah, B.
Or did you say B?
It said B.
Oh, B? Okay. My hearing's not that great.
Was that Bravo or Delta?
Bravo.
Bravo.
Thank you. Sloppy.
Generally, who should respond to a station in the contiguous 48 states calling CQDX? Any caller is welcome to respond. Only stations in Germany. Any stations outside the lower 48 states. Only contest stations.
C.
Yep, C. Any stations outside the lower 48. What is the voluntary band restrictions for U.S. stations transmitting within the 48 contiguous states in the 50.1 megahertz to 50.125 megahertz band segment? Only contacts with stations not within the 48 contiguous states. Only contacts with other stations within the 48 contiguous states. Only digital contacts. Only SSTV contacts.
Alpha.
Alpha is correct. Only contacts with stations not within the 48 contiguous states. Which of the following is good amateur practice for net management? Always use multiple sets of phonetics during check-in. Have a backup frequency in case of interference or poor. Transmit the full net roster at the beginning of every session. All these choices are correct.
Bravo.
Yeah, B.
Yep.
Yep.
B is it. have a backup frequency. Which of the following indicates that you're looking for an HF contact with any station? Sign your call sign once, following by the words listening for a call. If no answer, change frequency and repeat. Say QTC, followed by this is in your call sign. If no answer, change frequency and repeat. Repeat CQ a few times, followed by this is, with then your call sign a few times. Then pause to listen, repeat as necessary. Transmit an unmodulated carrier for approximately 10 seconds, followed by this is in your call sign, and pause to listen.
Charlie.
Yep. Why do many amateurs keep a station log? The FCC requires a log of all international contacts. The FCC requires a log of all international third-party traffic. The log provides evidence of operation needed to renew a license without retest, to help with a reply if the FCC requests information about your station.
Yeah. D. Delta.
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 Yep, Delta, to help with a reply if the FCC requests information. Which of the following is required when participating in a contest on HF frequencies? Submit a log to the contest sponsor. Send a QSL card to the station's worked or QSL via logbook of the world. Identify your station per normal FCC regulations. All these choices are correct.
C.
C.
Yeah.
Identify your station per normal FCC regulations. Modes. Amateurs use many different modes of communication. All right. CW is continuous wave. It's found in the lower ranges for each band, but it's permitted through all the bands. I can't really say I've ever really heard it in the single sideband, but I've heard of it being done, but I myself have never heard it. Then there's AM, a single sideband, single SSB. And, well, of course, single sideband is the most common voice mode. It's displaced AMN. AM is the preferred HF mode. And that's because it uses less spectrum space. And it results in it having a greater range than AM. So typically we use upper sideband from 20 to 10 meters and lower sideband everywhere else except on 60 meters. And here John was commenting about FM repeaters on 10 meters. So, and that's true. I've not done that, but I've never been involved with that. But and it probably could be interesting. Something else to explore. You know, there's so much going on, so many places you could get into. Digital voice. Digital voice using a sound card, using a modem connected to a transceiver. this is quite common. Modern rigs quite often have a sound card built into them now, so you can expect to do that quite easily without much of a problem. Yeah, the fidelity is good. It's, compared to regular single sideband signals, but it's less affected by fading. Again, I don't do a lot of single sideband, so I can't really speak to that too much personally. Maybe Wes could speak to that more than I could. But I will take their word for it that this is.
No, I haven't done it either. Digital voice on HF is something that is a real niche mode right now. I'm not sure there are any more than a few hundred people who can use it on HF.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, Mark.
Mm-hmm. So apparently there's a digital voice mode. The most popular is FreeDV, and a protocol developed by G4GUO. So there's, packet radio is common on VHF and UHF, but it's also common on HF, and with FT8 being the most popular. FT8 is extremely popular on HF. It got particularly popular when they stopped requiring CW for licensing. This sort of FT8 started to fill the gap for a lot of guys who wanted to, who were having trouble with DX. They couldn't. A lot of DX stations were running CW, and these guys who couldn't run CW were stuck with single sideband. And if the DX stations weren't running much single sideband, they were not making very many DX contacts. And then suddenly FT8 came into the picture, and it was a lifesaver for them, because you really literally don't do anything. I mean, the computers are doing everything. All you're doing is pushing buttons. Frankly, I hate the mode myself, because I just as soon watch paint dry, but it is very popular. You should read up on it, and because again, it's used quite a bit, and it's very good for. It can get through under circumstances where even CW can't get through. You can't even hear the signal, and it can get through. But again, all you're transmitting is the bare minimum of information. All you're exchanging is essentially the call signs and a signal report, but it's all electronic. Okay, you're not saying anything. The computers are doing the talking.
I'd like to say that the digital modes are used in the same portion as the CW part of the band.
No, it's not used. They have their own particular place in the bands. It's usually, for example, on 40 meters, it would be about 7.074.
Right, and that's CW.
Yeah.
That's the CW portion of the band. When you look at the band plan chart,
Yeah, yeah.
that's all I'm
But,
saying. It's down there where it's not quite as crowded as up in the sideband.
yeah, but it's but they more or less have just carved themselves out this space uh, for
Mhm.
FT8, uh, and
Yeah.
it's the same place on every band. In other words, 20 meters would be 14.074. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think like 6 meters. I forget where it is.
yeah,
And
but so
it's a gentleman's agreement kind of thing again.
yeah, yeah, it's a gentleman's agreement sort of thing.
Gentle
Which is
ladies.
which again is quite popular, quite common with amateur radio. We have a lot of gentlemen's agreements, which is a good thing, you know. This is FT8 is kind of a entirely different thing, a separate thing from from our our discussions here. It's something you have to get into on your own, but it's something you need to explore. So you've got FT8, PSK 63, and PSK 31. RIDI is another one. It's the oldest and the most common. I shouldn't say most common. It's still common. It's quite popular in contests. You're going to hear it on Saturdays a lot. Certain weekends where they got the RIDI contests, they really crank up, and they go really deep down into the CW portion of the bands.
Hmm.
And I mean, they take over because there's no QRLing. They just come on. You know, they'll just you might be having a QSO and they'll just come right down on top of you. There's Pactor and one more, but I know too much about Pactor. I used to know a little bit about Pactor back in the day, but not too much. Back in the times before the clusters of today, back in the early '90s when I was doing first first doing DXing, we were using Pactor for passing information about who was on DX someplace. But I I haven't done much with Pactor in the last 20 years or so. How did I get this? Uh,
Hmm.
okay, accidentally went the wrong way here. Sorry, guys. Okay, we get into the image modes. And you can send slow speed TV and photos and graphics, and you're sending a tone and it's reconstructed as an image on a display, and it's allowed on the same frequencies as voice. And again, I don't get into this, but it's quite it with some guys it's quite popular. They like to do it. And again, like I said, it's slow scan television, SSTV. And it's called slow because it's slow. It takes time. And we have also fast scan amateur television. which is it's kind of restricted. I don't know too much about this. I've never gotten into it, so I can't really speak to it too much. I don't know if John or Wes knows too much about it.
I've used it.
Have you?
You know, when there used to be a repeater in Clawson, and you could use your I forget, it was channel 62 dots. I don't know what it was. It was certain channel you could see it, but that's back before digital TV. I don't know what they've done now. Um, anyways.
So anyway, here's some mode comparisons, and you might see some questions, concerning this. So CW've got a bandwidth of up to about 150 hertz with a data rate up to 60 words a minute. Now, single sideband, again, as we talked before, is 3 kilohertz. And narrow bandwidth HF digital is up to 500 hertz. And examples of that are Ready or FT8, PSK31, JT65. And wide bandwidth HF digital, with a bandwidth of up to 2.3 kilohertz, like Pactor. VHF, UHF is up to 100 kilohertz. So you've got D-Star, System Fusion, DMR. So let's get into some practice questions. Which mode is most commonly used for voice communication on frequencies of 14 megahertz or higher? Upper, lower, suppressed sideband, or double sideband?
I believe it's upper.
Yeah.
Everybody agree? Upper? Upper it is.
That's what I thought.
Which mode is most commonly used for voice communications on 160, 75, and 40 meters? Upper, lower, suppressed, or double?
Lower.
Yeah. Well, if the other one was upper, this has got to be lower, right? Right. D, Baker, lower sideband. Which mode is most commonly used for a single sideband voice in VHF and UHF? Upper, lower, suppressed, or double?
That's still upper.
Yeah, it's still upper. Which mode is most commonly used for voice communications on 17 and 12 meters? Upper, lower, suppressed, or double?
Upper.
Yep, upper.
Upper.
Which mode of voice communications is most commonly used on the HF and amateur bands? Frequency modulations, double sideband, single sideband, single phase modulation.
Single sideband.
Yep, single sideband.
Sideband.
Which of the following is an advantage of using single sideband as compared to other analog voice modes on the HF amateur bands? Very high fidelity voice modulation, less subject to interference from atmospheric static crashes, ease of tuning on receive and immunity to impulse noise, less bandwidth used, and greater power efficiency.
D, delta.
Delta, yeah.
D.
Delta.
Which of the following statements is true of single sideband? Only one sideband of the carrier are transmitted, the other sideband is suppressed. Only one sideband is transmitted, the other sideband and carrier are suppressed. Single sideband is the only voice mode authorized on 20, 50, and 10. Single sideband is the only voice mode authorized on 160, 75, and 40 meter.
B.
B
Bravo.
is. Only one sideband is transmitted, the other sideband and carrier are suppressed, right? Why do most amateur stations use lower sideband on the 160, 75, and 40 meter bands? Lower sideband is more efficient than upper sideband at these frequencies. Lower sideband is the only single sideband legal on these frequency bands because it is fully compatible with an AM detector. It is commonly accepted amateur practice.
Yep. Delta.
D.
Delta.
Yep, D. HF receiving. We're going to be going over 9 o'clock. I hope you guys don't have a problem with that. If you do, we can let it go to next week. All right, VHF, VFL, VHF and FM receivers, we have basic controls. You've got a channel, squelch, and volume. That's it. You know. But when you get into HF rigs, you've got a lot more. You've got to be able to. You've got continuous tuning, so you must be able to receive signals in the presence of noise and interference. So you've got to be able to you have to be able to selectively pick out the signals. So you've got to have selectivity between the frequencies, between signals. It has to be sensitive to detect a signal. So you've got, as you can see here, from the picture, you've got a number of different things that you don't see on your little HT. Passband filters, notch filters, audio peak filters, all kinds of little fun things that you can play with. Nothing like the toys, guys. Nothing like the toys. On the other hand, you've got a lot of things you got to deal with. A lot of noise. This is more common on HF than VHF, UHF. You can get that from anything, motors, generators, atmospheric noise, you name it, it'll give you noise. You get a insulator gap on a, from the electrical companies, on a pole, on a wire, it'll start, there'll be a gap, there'll be a spark gapping there someplace, and you'll be picking that up from a half a mile away, maybe, and you might have to trace that down.
Was one of the examples that they used to have with people with plasma TVs. They didn't like that, did they?
Yeah, plasma T's. West talks about his neighbor who's got a plasma TV. Drives him nuts. part of the reason for signal reporting between stations when you first make a contact is giving the information. You've got an RST report. Readability, signal strength, and tone. Readability is a scale of 1 to 5. Strength is 1 to 9, 9 being the best. In tone, again, 1 to 9. Now this is only used for CW and digital modes. These days, you don't normally find a lot of guys with bad rigs. I used to hear a lot of guys out of Cuba with tone problems because the rigs would either be out of adjustment or they'd have just bad power coming into their houses, and they couldn't. So they would have they'd have a tone problem, and so they'd have chirp or something like that. But even they have cleaned up their act quite a bit, so there's not too much of that. But every once in a while, the other day I was working some guy, and he had a terrible radio, so I sent him a bad a report telling him that. I told him he's got a bad signal, and I sent him a QSL card telling him he had a bad signal and he needed to clean it up.
I do that, Marv. I got a rig that warbles. It it has a chirp to it. I think it's a power supply problem.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When they talk about some interference, sometimes there's a thing that I heard people say about dirty power, or your electrical system in your house may have a dirty electrical supply or something, or interrupted or interference from the power.
I see that more in a car when I'm running HF in a car.
Yeah, it's not as likely to happen in a house. You know, here in the States, the power companies have a pretty clean,
Yeah,
system.
I'll hear people go by with a car that is, you can tell that that the noise is coming from the car, the
Yeah.
old ignition noise.
Yeah, but even then, it's not too common anymore to have
No, it isn't.
to
No.
hear a car with bad, with an ignition problem like that. It has to be a really old car. But you will have readability and strength issues that when you're contacting somebody, and I think I use that quite a bit to as far as knowing how to adjust my QSO. For example, if I'm working somebody and I get a report from them that they send me, let's say they send me a 339. Well, that's telling me that they can't read me very well, and the strength of my signal to them is not very strong. So what I'm going to do at that point is I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to be as fast. I might knock off 5 or even more words per minute so that he can understand me better. That is when I'm sending CW. In single sideband, it's a different thing. Again, over here, as they say here, if you get if somebody has a bad signal, you would send a C after the RST report to indicate that you're getting chirp. Now, of course, if you're sending single sideband, you'd only be sending 5.9, so all you got is all you've got is readability and signal strength and tone. That's readability and signal strength. That's all. As far as signal sideband is concerned. So you're going to either say you're going to be, but again, you can let them know how this, how the signal is. It is important. Now, I have a problem. For example, for some reason or other, my signal's going into into like Missouri and Georgia. I get a lot of 5.5s, which tells me that for some reason or other, my node going down into that area seems to be a little weak. So it tells me something about my signal. Well, going on with this, HF receivers use sharp filters to reject unwanted signals. And so because HF operation is not channelized, you're going to encounter signals close enough in frequency to be audible as low or high pitched speech fragments. And this is QRM interference. So again, you have to be able to filter this out. You can use a notch filter. Well, the typical thing would be to use a notch filter. Well, here are some practice questions. When sending CW, what does a C mean when adding to the RST report? A chirpy or unstable signal? Report was read from an S meter rather than estimated. 100% copy. Key clicks.
A alpha.
Yeah. Chirpy or unstable signal. What does the Q signal, QRN, mean? Send more slowly, stop sending. 0 beat my signal. I am troubled by static.
I believe that's D is delta.
Higher signal reports typically exchanged at the beginning of an HF contact. To allow each station to operate according to conditions, to ensure that contacts will count for award programs, to follow standard radiogram structure, to allow each station to calibrate their frequency display.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think it's A.
Yeah. A.
HF transmitting phone.
What was the answer to that last one?
It was A.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear an answer.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thought my phone had a hiccup.
Okay. So when you're operating a phone, there's essentially 2 ways to key the transmitter. You could either use a button to push to talk, like you would with your HT, or they also can use a voice-operated transmitter or Vox, which is actually hands-free. It's the transmitter has a circuit that picks up when you start to speak and goes into transmit mode. I've always used a manual transmit mode myself. Dates back to my first rig, which was not so great with Vox. So I never just habit. I always stayed with push to talk. So HF transmitting in CW, there's a lot of There's a lot of pro signs, shortcuts. 2-letter shortcuts like AR. Means the end of a message. If your cardinal rule in CW is never send faster than you can understand. You know, if you're sending at 25 words a minute and you can't understand the code at 25 words a minute, it's not a good thing to do. If you're sending at 25 words a minute and you can't understand code faster than 15 words a minute, then it's not to your advantage at all. So the best thing to do is if somebody is sending faster than you can understand, the thing to do is send a QRS to ask them to slow down. Or you could send a QRQ to tell them to speed up.
Does anyone know of anybody using a CW translator app or function?
A reader?
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, they don't work very well.
I have one on my phone, and I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I've listened a few times to it, and it may not be accurate.
They work if the code is machine generated. If it's coming from operators, it usually is not very accurate because it just can't compensate for people's. Most people have are slightly erratic, so they can't copy it. They usually can't do very well with if conditions are not perfect. If there's a lot of static.
So you say their translation doesn't come through. They might
sorry?
have their translation. I mean their accents. Hi.
Yeah. So if there's atmospheric conditions and stuff like that, it can affect them. So it's not a good thing to use them to use them as a crutch. You're better to learn the best translator is that space between your ears. Again, I wouldn't say that most CW operators start with a straight key. Many do and then go to electronic key. A straight key is probably good to about 15 words a minute. After that, most get real choppy. It's very difficult to run a straight key very effectively over 15 words a minute. I have to admit I learned on a straight key, but after 15 words, I went to electronic key and paddles. Now I'm a member of the CW Ops, and I teach through their CW Academy, and we start right off with paddles and keyers, and we start with we start with sending the characters at 25 words a minute, and we put the spacing. We extend the spacing. We might the character is at 25 words a minute, but the spacing might be at 5 words a minute. So the idea is we don't want you to be able to count spaces. We don't want you to be able to count. We want you to learn by sound. And that's the way to learn code, by sound. Not because you learn it the fastest that way, and you learn it the most effectively that way. again, when, as I mentioned, we talked about using the panels. It automatically generates the code. You know, you get the if you're using it normally, the dits are on the right panel. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. The dashes are on the left panel, the dashes are on the left panel, and the dits are. No, dashes are on the left panel, and the dits are on the left panel. Now, most radios are set up for QSK operation, which means that they can hear between the. You can listen between the letters. Now, some radios are better at this than others. I've got a 10 Tech that I use that is very good at that. The Ellercraft radios are extremely good at that. But those brands were originated by people who were CW operators to begin with, so that was very important. They call that QSK as full break-in. And the idea of matching your frequency to the received signal is called zero beating. And most modern radios are set up, they have a way of doing that, okay? And each brand of radio has a different way of doing it, but all modern radios have a way of doing it. But you usually get to where you can do it by ear. When you get practiced at it, you can do it by ear pretty well. ProSign KN is used at K instead of K when you want to talk to just one particular station and you don't want to and you don't want to talk to anybody else. As opposed to and SK ends it all. Now I disagree with if QSL is being acknowledged receipt. I think that's slow. I think it's just easier to just send an R. Here's some, if you're interested in CW, here's some things. CW Ops and their CW Academy is a good place to learn. Again, this is, I was talking to you about that. The the Long Island CW Club is a good place also. Though they tend to start teaching you using straight keys. So let's do some practice questions. Which of the following statements is true of voice box operation versus push to talk. The received signal is more natural sounding. It allows hands-free operation. It occupies less bandwidth. It provides more power output.
B.
Yeah. Allows hands-free operation. How many races, training drills, and tests be how often may races, training drills, and tests be routinely conducted without special authorization? No more than 1 hour per month, no more than 2 hours per month, no more than 1 hour per week, no more than 2 hours per week.
C. Charles.
C, yes, right. No more than 1 hour per week. Which of the following describes full break-in CW operation, USK? Braking stations send Morse code ProSign BK. Automatic keyers instead of hand keys are used to send Morse code. An operator must activate a manual send receive switch before and after every transmission. Transmitting stations can receive between code characters and elements.
D. Delta.
Yeah. What should you do if a CW station sends QRS? Send slower, change frequency, increase your power, repeat everything twice.
Alpha.
Yes, send slower. What does it mean when a CW operator sends KN at the end of a transmission? No US station should call. Operating full break-in. Listening only for specific station or stations. Closing station now.
D.
One.
Delta.
No. C. Listening only for a specific station.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
What is the best speed to use when answering a CQ in Morse code? The fastest speed at which you are comfortable copying, but no slower than the CQ. The fastest speed at which you are comfortable copying, but no faster than the CQ. At the standard calling speed of 10 words per minute. At the standard calling speed of 5 words per minute.
Yeah.
B.
Bravo. Bravo.
Fastest speed at which you are comfortable copying, but no faster than the CQ. Yes. What does the term zero beat mean in CW operation? Matching the speed of the transmitting station, operating split to avoid interference on frequency, sending without error, matching the transmit frequency to the frequency of a received signal.
E. Delta.
What pro sign is used to indicate the end of a formal message when using CW? SK, BK, AR, KN.
You gave an example of it, didn't you?
I did.
Would it be A, alpha?
Good guess. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, you're right. AR. You can also use SK too.
It could be.
But
See,
they,
that's a
but they,
trick
but
question.
they,
Yeah,
but the book says AR, but I'd use SK. But the
you used SK correct. The book says AR. That's why I
yeah,
asked.
yeah,
I do pay attention.
yeah. But the book says AR, so
Thank you.
I got a hunch it's because it's formal message, but I always use an SK.
Yeah. Yeah, now that I remember when I was looking at these, I was saying, this doesn't really make sense to me, but I know the book says it. And I remember this now when I was looking through the questions. What does the Q signal QSL mean? Send slower. We have already confirmed the contact. I have received and understood. We have worked before.
B.
Yeah, I have received and understood. Now, I have to say, in CW, I never hear anybody send QSL. But I do hear people in single sideband say QSL. And CW QSOs that I have, invariably, all I hear is an R, and I use R's because it's faster. What does the Q signal QRV mean? You are sending too fast. There is interference on frequency. I am quitting for the day. I am ready to receive.
That would be D. Delta.
Yeah. What is the function of electronic ear? Automatic transmit receive switching, automatic generation of dots and dashes for CW operation, to allow time for switching the antenna from the receiver to the transmitter, computer interface for PSK and RIDI operation.
That would be B, Bravo. That's the one with the two paddles, dots and dashes.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Emergency operation. Amateurs should be familiar with emergency rules and procedures.
Marv, we're getting to about 9:30.
Yeah, I think this is about the end of it. So I think we can finish. We'll finish up here. I think in a few seconds. So let me take a look here. I believe this is about the end of it.
Yeah, this was the last section in the class for the chapter, or in the book for the chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've attended Zoom classes where Zoom only allows you like 2.5 hours. So if the screen goes blank at 9:30, it's not you. It's
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah.
They only allow so much time for free or you got to pay for it.
Yeah. So there's two primary emergency response organizations, ERAS and RACES. Okay. And ERAS its mission is to provide communications assistance to local and regional government and relief organizations. And RACE's mission is to provide essential communications for state and local governments in time of emergency. And only a licensed amateur may be the control operator of a RACES station. So in a distress call situation, if you receive a call for help, you immediately suspend whatever you're doing and you answer and handle that call for help. That makes sense. So you stand by to receive the location of the emergency and the name of the assistance required. And you do what you can. You either relay the information to the proper authorities, and you stay on frequency. And if you're the station making the distress call on voice mode, you say Mayday, Mayday. On digital, you said SOS, SOS. That's SSO. That's SSOS. That's SOSS. And then you identify the transmission with your call sign. You state your location and the nature of your situation. And you describe the type of assistance you're required. And you're allowed to use any means of communication, any frequency, any mode, any power level outside of your normal privileges. So, what's the first thing you should do if you're communicating with another amateur station and hear a station in distress break in? Do you inform your local emergency coordinator, acknowledge the station in distress to determine which assistance may be needed, immediately decrease your power to avoid interfering with the station in distress, or immediately cease all transmissions?
B.
B,
Bravo.
Bravo.
Who may be the control operator of an amateur station transmitting in races to assist relief operations during a disaster? Only a person holding an FCC-issued amateur operator license? Only a racist net control operator? A person holding a FCC-issued amateur operator license or an appropriate government official? Any control operator when normal communication systems are operational?
A. Alpha.
Yeah, A. That's it. That's it, guys. Well, thank you very much for hanging over that extra half an hour and 35 minutes, actually. Any